Alright, I'm going to try to show you how to pop off some of these keys and clean them. Just the other day I spilled root beer all over the keyboard. It was puddled everywhere. And surprisingly, the keys inside of this thing are actually pretty sturdy. They don't have lots of areas for things to sink in. But I wanted to show you how to pull these off correctly. There's a lot of text explanations, but let's see. So I've already cleaned many of these, but my number 5 here is still pretty terrible. I can push 4 pretty easily. Refocus here. But 5 kind of, it's very sticky and sluggish. In fact, this morning most of the keys made popping noises as I tried to press them down. So what you're going to want to try to do is get the key up from the side, and I like to kind of come at this from 2 angles until I can get a fingernail kind of underneath one of the sides. You want to pull the top corner here up, and it'll feel horrible as you do it, but you want to pull it kind of up and out until it pops a little, okay? And as you can see, I've got it kind of pulled up now. So from there, there's still a couple of catches, but it's extremely simple to just pop it forward and off. And now the problem I'm having is that this little plastic piece here, this is the mechanism for the key to press up and down. And the nature of the problem is that this is not even falling down. It should look like that normally, and if you kind of pull it up a little, it should fall back down all by itself. And root beer inside of the key is clearly preventing that. So you can try to clean the top of the key off, but as you can see, it's not even that dirty. It's not got anything obvious there. There are a few hooks and catches here, but none of those are clearly to blame. But feel free to rinse that off in case you've got anything there. I do happen to have a little bit of brown stickiness there. I've just got a little bit of a bowl of water here just to help me clean that off, and I'll just set the key down over there for a moment. So now to get this off, I like to use just a toothpick, and I've been using this already. You can see its ends are a little messed up here, but that's okay. Now the way that this hooks onto the assembly is there are a couple of hooks here, and these are hard to take off first. So instead, we're going to focus down here on these 2 sides. And I like to just take the toothpick and not pull up, I'm just going to push inward like this. And I'm going to do it underneath to force it to just pop up, just like that, okay? And then sometimes it'll come off just fine like that, but I'll do the other side as well. Just push it forward. Now, this kind of moves around and the back comes off without any resistance at all. And now this part here it may not look very dirty at all, although if you've had your laptop for a very long time, there might be a lot of dust or dead skin or hair pieces or something down there. You can feel free to clean that out. What the problem for me is that this piece here, this is the mechanism that does the, trying to spin it with one hand. This is the piece that moves around. And the problem is this should move extremely freely, almost too easily it should spin around, and it is sluggish right now. Very difficult to make it move around. As I kind of force it, it's gotten much easier. So what I'm going to do, and actually you can kind of see there are a little bit of brown spots in the center on the sides where I must have some root beer inside this hinge. So that is the part that I'm going to clean. And again, I'm going to use this bowl of water. Sometimes just placing it in and spinning it makes it loosen up really easily. If it's just a little bit of sluggishness you have in your keys, this might be fine. I'm going to actually pull it apart. So I'm going to take this apart. I want my keyboard to work perfectly. I spent too much money on this. So There's not really a trick here, you're just going to have to kind of force it out, and this is pretty difficult with just one hand. Whoops. Wow, there we go. I'm just pulling it apart here. Yikes. Okay. So anyway, I've got the two pieces side by side here. Now this might be difficult to distinguish the details to know how to put it back together, but I will show you that in just a moment. I'm going to dip it in the water here again to make sure I get the hinge pegs here on the sides, get them cleaned off. Dry those out. Do the same to this. This one's a little harder to guarantee that you're cleaning it, so if you want to take a toothpick at the little holes here, you can kind of just clean that out. I don't think this one has that trouble anymore after I put it in the water. So anyway, I'm going to wipe these down. And now to put this back together, we're going to, let's see, get a nice dark background here. The way that this works is that you will want, get the camera to refocus, you're going to want this hook here on, near the center of the screen right now. You're going to want that right there, that little piece, to be on the upper side of the plastic piece. So right now I've got it kind of on the top. That is what you want. That means that at the back, the pegs down here will be there. They will technically be kind of a little, whoops, they'll be kind of down a little bit on the, in the hole of the thing. So I'm going to set that down just like that. Again, the plastic piece near the top up here will be raised a little off the surface. Now this little one, the piece, the place that it makes contact with the board is on these two slits right here. Alright, and these slits, this might be extremely difficult to show. They have, let's see if we can get it to focus. It doesn't like that. Alright, it's a little better. These pieces here have some grooves in them. You see kind of at the top of this right now. And what these will do is hook onto the onto a couple little metal hooks down there. And you want it facing up so that the top is the less bumpy side. The other side, other side has a lot of texture to it. A lot of different raised areas and such. The part that you want facing up is much more smooth. Alright, and so they're going to go together just like this, and so you just want to get the pegs back together so that they rotate freely, and so I'm going to try to do that now. Alrighty. I'm gonna stick one in. Alright, and then I will get the other, and you just kind of have to pull it and force it. So there. Got that now. And again, this spins very freely, but it only has one position at this point where it'll sit flat. If you rotate it all the way around, it won't actually go flat. And so there's only one correct way for it to look at this point, so you hold it just like that. Now over here, I'm going to take just a moment to, with a very slightly damp cloth, water at this point is the least of my worries because of what I've done to this, but just with a damp cloth I'm going to kind of dab around in here and just make sure that nothing terribly obvious is wrong with here. You can kind of do some detail cleaning if you want with a toothpick. Oh, that doesn't want to focus. Try one more time. There we go. There's not a ton you can do here. You'll want to, this part around the very edge is very sturdy, but there's a little bit of black just inside of that. Don't press too hard on there, because that is a thin layer that just underneath here is the backlight, and you don't want to be pressing too hard on any of that. This cross here in the center is pretty sturdy. The button itself is not too bad. Don't pry that up, of course. Try not to clean too aggressively around the edge of here, because this is got some kind of adhesive to keep it in place. You don't want to be picking apart at it. But just do what you can. Do anything, fix anything that's obvious. Take some tweezers at little bits if you need to. But I'm going to take my piece here, which I have accidentally rotated to an incorrect position. Get it flat again. Now you want the, whoops, kind of hard to watch a camera and maneuver with one hand here. Alright, so what you want is, you want the tall slits here at the top. And again, you want the wing of the larger outer piece to be, I'm gonna find the sweet spot here. Alright, you want the wing to be raised, remember. And when I'm talking about the wing, I'm talking about this little tiny piece that's sticking off the side. Alright, so with that, what you're going to do is you want to get these two hooks right here and here. They're going to slide into the tall vertical slits in the plastic piece. And so I'm going to put this down on top, and it's just loose. I haven't done anything to it. I'm just going to make sure that I've pressed down, and I'm just going to kind of push it this way a little to make sure that it's hooked there. And now to get the rest of it in place, it's very, very easy. You're just going to press down for 1, 2 clicks, and now I've got the whole thing is sturdily in place. Now, remember, my problem was that it would stay raised, so I'm going to pull up on it just a little bit, and it should fall back down. That is what I need. So, to replace the keycap, should be very easy to tell which way is up in most cases. However, if you need to check, you've got 2 pieces here on the back of the key, down low and close together. Those will be at the bottom, and then the other 2 pieces are higher up, spread apart at the sides. Those will be on the top. So what we'll do is place this on here loosely. I like to push this top right side and then move across to the top left. You won't hear any pops or anything, but it should be in place. And then either with my other hand, or in this case I'll just do it with another finger, I like to push down on the bottom right for 1 pop, and then move over and do it to the left. Get a second pop. And now it moves beautifully. To do this with some of the other keys. A word of warning: Spacebar, Command, some Shift, Caps Lock, Tab. Some of these other keys that are much larger, particularly the Spacebar, they have many, many contact points that'll pop as you pull it off or put it back on. So, and in the case of the Spacebar and Command, you actually have 2 metal bars that are helping it to raise and lower, to give it sturdiness. And that's actually why, in the case of the Spacebar and some of these other buttons, you're able to push it anywhere and it responds, because it's got so much of a mechanism here to push the single button that's in the center. It's a good quality keyboard. That will make it kind of difficult to pull off. I might try to do that again a little bit later. That one's pretty difficult, but I also wanted to focus really quickly on these small keys at the top, because they are slightly different. I already just did Escape, and I guess I did F1 as well. Let's see, we've got some of these others. Now these other ones, they are just as sticky as my other main keys. So to pull this off, this is a little bit harder to do. You really gotta get your fingernail in there. Let me try to do that real quick. Very difficult sometimes. It doesn't help that it's kind of stuck in a downward position. I'm just trying to wiggle my fingernail into position. Yikes. Ah, got it. Okay. My fingernail is hurting very much, by the way, now after hours of doing this. These are a little smaller, and they operate on much the same way that the larger keys do, but it's a little bit harder to finally pull one corner and not another. So what's probably going to happen is that you can pull the bottom up much more easily, so that it's on a bit of a hinge, and then the top should come off very easily. So the bottom, in this case, will be where you pull from, whereas we did the top left on the larger keys. Do the exact same thing. You can clean the keycap if you need to. Mine looks like it has a little bit of sticky fluid on it still, so I'm going to just get some water on that, try to clear that up. Now in this case, the plastic piece, again, it works very similarly, but it's much smaller, and it has details on it that the other does not. So I'm going to remove this in almost exactly the same way as before. There's still 2 pegs here at the sides, and there's still 2 vertical slits here. So I'm going to push up on that, push up on the other side, and this should come up very easily at that point. Let's see. Now, the detail on this, again, let's do this. Now, this will still lie flat when in proper position, which is kind of important for taking it apart. If you can avoid taking this apart, that is probably best. Just because it's so much smaller and a little bit harder to get together, you'll notice it's got some kind of pieces that appear to mesh together. These keys aren't too bad, so I'm just going to stick it in the water here, kind of spin the inside piece around. Boy, this focus won't cooperate with me. So just spin it around a few times, get it to work out, kind of dry this a little. And while that sits for just a moment, I'm going to inspect this bit, make sure that there's no obvious problems. There's actually not much going on here at all. There's a little bit of a sticky area here, but it's not honestly that bad, and that's not really where the key is touching, so I'll just try to clear that up. My keyboard is really not that dirty. I've only owned this laptop for just a little while, which is what made me so upset when I spilled root beer all over the keyboard. In the event that you have to take this apart, keep in mind that it's working exactly the same way as the other. It's just that, meaning that you will have slits at the top. Oops, not on camera here. You will have the 2 vertical slits facing upward, and right now the key is sitting in the same position. It will eventually sit inside the keyboard tray. And you will, it's not so much of a wing this time, but there's a little peg at the top left of the key that needs to be raised up higher than the rest, so that these 2 back pegs are able to sit into position while the 2 slits receive their hooks as well. Let's see, so I'm going to now place this back in here. Same procedure in terms of getting the top hooks down first, just to make sure that they're there. They'll kind of sit loosely. Right now it's kind of just setting in there, and now I'm going to kind of press on the 2 sides to make sure that the pegs, the bottom left and right, get underneath their little hooks. And now you should be ready to put the keycap back on. And this one, you will want to, it doesn't have hooks on the top left and right. It pretty much just has 4 clamps that it's going to try to use. So you can probably just get away with trying to push straight down, rub across. You might hear 2 sounds, even though there's really 4 pieces. So that is all there is to that. Finally, I'm going to try to look at, I'm going to deal with this shift key, because this is one of the larger ones, and you'll see what I mean about the metal bars here. Actually, to be perfectly honest, let's do command instead, because this one's a little bit more similar to the spacebar, in that it has some metal in it. The shift button has some metal, but it's not quite as prominent as it is in these two keys. So I've pulled this one off once before, but I didn't clean it well enough, so I'm going to do it again. Get my fingernail under this. This one's not too difficult. You have a metal bar tracing in most of the square shape of the top, and then a second one around the bottom here. So this and the spacebar will give you a lot more trouble to do that with, and you might pull the little metal bars out, and they're not hard to replace, so this isn't too much of a problem. But I'm just going to, whoops, got part of it pulled up, but then I let it fall back down. I suspect I popped some of the metal bar connection off, and it feels really, really horrible pulling on that, but you just have to do that because there are multiple contacts with the metal bar, and that is really pulling off. So as you can see here, we've got a metal bar that I've pulled the key free from, and I have managed to pull some of the plastic mechanism up as well. Looks like I even pulled the hinge out, which is fine, but there is a second metal bar here, as you can see on the bottom, and part of the plastic assembly is still attached. I'm going to take, I'm going to try to leverage this. I need to get the metal bars detached, so I'm just trying to put pressure on the top of the key here and pull the bottom. And I probably have half of it. Yeah. So the plastic looks exactly as it does in the normal letter keys. It's just that what we're dealing with here is an extra couple of metal bars. I'm going to pull this out for just a moment. We've got a couple of metal bars. Let me use a toothpick. These flop around very easily, so it makes it a little difficult to put back into place here later. It's not too bad, but you'll want to be aware of this. If these come out, which is not that hard to have happen, the only thing keeping them in place is just a little bit of pressure here, so you can just kind of pull it and get it back in. I'll pull it out here for you just to show you. So here it is. I had to take these out to clean the root beer off of the metal. That way I could run a cloth over them. And then to put it back in, you can just hook the one side, assuming I can get it in here, and then get it in the other. There's really, the purpose of these metal bars is to, having some trouble here, purpose of the metal bars is to give the key cap more support. I am really failing getting that back on. It's probably because I've stretched it out slightly. Maybe put that side in first, and then I'll do that one. Oh, and then I pulled it back out. I am amazing. Okay. And the bottom metal bar works exactly the same way. Mine clearly still has some debris in there, so I'm gonna just try to do what I can to get the obvious parts up. It's probably not a big deal. Notice I'm not going to push very hard on this because this is the backlight area. Just making sure that there's nothing too crazy going on there. Alright, and now to deal with the plastic parts is exactly the same. This piece is identical to those in the normal keys. So you can feel free to, now remember my keycap had the other half stuck to it. I can, let's see, okay, that's just a clamp. You should be able to pull it off fairly well. I just can't do it with one hand. Let's see. There it goes. Alright, now I'm going to clean these the same way I did the others, because the hinges are what make the key so sticky. get the other one doused as well, just for good measure. Alright, and keycap in this case. It will look very similar as before. What'll happen is you want, I mean obviously there's a right side up to this thing, but what's going on is that you need the two hooks that are closer together down low on the bottom, and then the two hooks up here that are further apart will be on top. You happen to also have a couple of extra hooks at the borders here along the long ends that will attach themselves to the metal bar. And so you might, if your metal bars were sticky, you might want to be wiping those off on the back of the keycap as well, just to prevent more resistance. Alright, so I'm going to take these two little pieces, get them back together one last time for good measure. Again, slits will go here, the flatter side on top, the side with more texture, side with more texture here will go on the bottom. So, get these things back together here. I'll set this down. Uh-oh. Looks like this key was a little broken in the first place. I think I might have gotten one of the pegs broken off. Either this time or one of the past times when I did this. So that is probably going to damage the key a bit, but I don't have a choice, so I'm going to put the one side back in. I'm going to have to hold this steady so that it doesn't just fall back out. Now to get this back into the body of the keyboard, again I'm going to place this on so that the hooks on the top are in place. Since those are the harder parts to snap on last, we'll just put those on first, and then we'll just apply just a little bit of pressure down the corners. And when I say a little bit of pressure, that's really all it takes. So this mechanism should now fall down all by itself. And the metal bars they just need to sit in their proper directions. And the easiest way to put the keycap back on in this case is to really just set this down and push on the corners. Remember there was the two connections for the metal bar, both on the top and the bottom. Let's see, some extra connections in the bottom. You probably get two at a time as you click here, so two clicks will happen simultaneously. That's about all there is to it. Luckily for me, my broken peg doesn't do too much to stop the key from working. Though I will want to be careful there. That is the fear with this key and with the spacebar. Spacebar has two extremely long metal bars that go all the way across, one at the top, one at the bottom. And the way it works is that it's got two plastic assemblies, one here and one here. And that is similar to the shift key. Shift key doesn't have metal bars quite as prominently as the spacebar does, but there are two plastic assemblies on either side. Then there is the plastic nub that actually is responsible for the button presses in the center in both of these keys. To pull the spacebar off, you can pretty easily take it from the same way. Whoops, didn't mean to lose that. You remember, because there's so many connections with the metal bar here, you're probably going to want to pull a corner and then try to work your way across and make sure that you're getting and just so you can get an angle here. I'm not pulling terribly far up on this, I'm just trying to get it just enough to pop free. Maybe start from the other side as well. Definitely don't want to apply too much force here. Now, eventually you'll be able to feel the metal bar with a finger, so you could probably help yourself out, push the metal bar back down. That way you can get a bit of a... whoops, I'm upside down here. Okay. Completely lost track of where the space bar is. There it is. So what we've got here is the metal bar that I've pushed back down. You can see there are plastic pieces here that came up as I was popping the metal bar off. Now there's a second metal bar on the bottom. And so you could probably just kind of work your way through piece by piece. I'm just applying pressure from the back, trying to push it forward. Alright? And as you can see, I didn't clear one of the connections. So there we go. There's a space bar. There is a metal piece in the center that is probably just to keep the center of the key from being able to be pressed down further than the sides of the key. This metal bar adds about as much width to the center of this key as the width of these plastic pieces, so that's probably just for sturdiness. You don't need to pull this out at all. There's no mechanism here that's interacting with that, so just clean it off if you need to, but don't get too crazy with it. Spacebar is not easy to tell which way is up from the front-facing part. So again, you're going to want to pay attention to this to the connection points. You'll have two near the bottom, closer together, two at the top, further apart. And both sides will look exactly the same in that respect. With these plastic pieces, you can see this one is not easily falling down all on its own. It does after a moment. Spacebar wasn't too bad, but I want to clean this to make my spacebar more responsive, so I'm going to test out this other one. This other one looks like it might be just fine. And that is probably because I spilled root beer on that half the keyboard. So I will use the toothpick again once more. And pop that side up, and again, I'm not really pulling up on these things, I'm just pushing forward. White balance is really off. Alright, so there we go. Now this piece is a little larger than we're used to so far, and it actually looks more like the pieces that was in the small keys up at the top, the escape and F1 and all that, with how much more detail is in this. But it's still got two slits at the top. It's still going to have wings up at the top here, on just above my fingernail on the left. There's that. And it's still raised higher on the top side. It's very flat. The bottom side, lots of texture still. Fairly flat, but not flat all the way across. You want flat all the way across. And I will clean this. This probably isn't too bad to pull apart if you need to, but I suspect all I need to do here is kind of just get some water in it. Rotate that around a bit. Dry it off. Alright. So now finally, we've got our key. What was I about to demonstrate? Oh, this key, because of the way it is built with these plastic pieces here, you actually can't rotate that all the way around. You can only rotate it one direction. It doesn't push back the other way. So it's either flat or it's raised and not flat like this. That's about as far as it goes. So we will make sure that it's flat. Set this onto the two hooks at the top. Make sure those are okay. And you just press back down on these two sides. Make sure that both sides are in. That's about it. Now these metal bars, if you need to clean them, once again, they're just, you can kind of wiggle them around and pull them out. Not a big deal. Careful not to stretch or bend them too much. But replacing this key will be exactly the same as for the command key. Let me make sure I've got it right side up. Got my two connections closer together down at the bottom. And so now to put this back on, I'm going to make connections on the top and the bottom and just work my way across. make sure that once I've done everything, oh, see, I missed one, there we go. Now my space bar is much better. Now I have a few more that I'm going to clean. These other ones, though, are very similar to normal keys. Tab, caps, lock, and shift are, they've got some wider pieces, but you shouldn't find anything under there that you haven't seen already at this point. Notice I've not really done anything over here. I don't need to in my case, which I'm very glad for. I imagine the pieces under the arrow keys is very similar to the F keys, so best of luck to you. If you have any further questions, or if you'd like me to see, or like to see me pull anything else off, I will be happy to consider it, and we'll see if I ever make a video out of it. Best of luck to you.